Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast on the English SBSN show. So, I am Kevin, and I am joined by two people. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sophia, you can go first.
Hi, I'm Sophia and I'm in grade 8.
I am the Green Prophet today. Um, there's the name. Owner and operator of the Stop BS Now website, and often the host of this show. Today, it's Kevin in charge.
Okay, so first off, we're going to start by just discussing how everybody is feeling about this lockdown because it is a huge change. So yeah, would one of you like to go first about how you're feeling in this time?
Yeah. Ladies first.
Okay, well, being in lockdown and stuck in quarantine, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of not only school time, but I'm missing out on a lot of experiences. And I definitely am thankful for having the possibility of going to school, going out and about, and yeah, being in lockdown and in quarantine sucks.
Yeah. Not pleasant at all for anyone. I'm managing quite well as I've been a solitary creature for much of my life, but it does take a toll on the people around me, I'm noticing.
Like you said, Peter, I feel like yeah, a lot of people before the quarantine generally just wouldn't go outside out of their own free choice. But now that we are being forced by the government to not go outside, it just feels a lot worse than if we just chose to.
I guess that's true, yeah. And there are people who live in the countryside and they're not affected much either. They have land and some freedom, but people who are living alone, elderly people in apartments, single people, I'm talking about adults now, not just children. They're getting depressed and annoyed. I've listened to doctors saying that the incidence of child abuse is increasing because adults are going a bit batty. And I know children who are like yourselves, not happy with this situation. It's absolutely infuriating, especially everything I read that doesn't come from the mainstream explains that this is the worst possible way to deal with a virus, any kind of epidemic. I don't call it a pandemic. That's an abuse of the English language. It doesn't deserve that word. At best, it's an epidemic. So for me, it's infuriating when I reflect on it. And yeah, maybe I feel a little bit, maybe some people feel a little bit like Dorothy might have felt, if I can segue into our novel.
Yeah, I feel because Dorothy, when she was at her home, she only had a one-room house and there was basically nothing around her and like not much things to do. And that can kind of relate to our situation right here. Because just like her, there's not much stuff that we can do anymore because of the situation.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, I'm also feeling kind of down because of this quarantine because it's part of your life that you're missing out on. You could have had lots of experiences outside, but now we are missing out on all those experiences, like Sophia said. Oh,
Right. And it's not healthy to be inside all the time. It's not only that the air quality is worse than it is outdoors, surprisingly, but that's true. But the amount of electromagnetic radiation that you're exposed to indoors is obviously generally worse indoors than it is outdoors. So it's just not good for human health.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've gone through how we're feeling in this quarantine, let's introduce this novel in general. So today on this podcast, we will be talking about The Wizard of Oz. So, a first theme that I would like to introduce for us to talk about is an underlying message of the author about politics. So, in this novel, everyone trusts Oz to do things, but in the end, he isn't actually able to do them. Sophia, would you like to give some comments on that?
Uh, that right there, I can definitely see some connection with our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Uh, Generally with politicians, they offer broken promises or, blank promises, and they just don't really fulfill up to what they say they are, and it's frustrating sometimes because you want someone to help you, because when you vote for someone in a democracy, you want them to help change the community in some way, but honestly, they're just in power and they aren't really doing anything. So it's frustrating seeing not only them being in power and not doing anything, but also myself as a younger person not being able to vote.
Right. My turn?
Yeah, okay. Green Prophet, would you like to add your expertise to it as well?
Ah, I can add a little bit. It does seem like our dear leader is doing nothing. He is throwing money around, but what is he doing to improve our health? Nothing. And he could be doing something. And even if it's not more than words, he could be at least recommending that everyone take a liquid vitamin D while they're home, perhaps some extra vitamin C. I've heard about selenium. All these things are affordable and healthy ways to protect your health. In addition to that, he's asking us to do nothing. So it's come to the point now where if an elderly lady were to fall down outside, I'm supposed to be afraid of touching her or coming to, breaking that 6 foot barrier that we've created around everyone, a bubble.
Yeah.
It's very dehumanizing. Um, and of course, the point that he's doing nothing applies to so much else, not just the current Corona drama. It's the environment. People have been crying about the environment for a lot longer than your lifetime, and the situation just gets worse. So let's be honest and say to ourselves, these wonderful wizards that we elect are not helping, can't help, maybe don't want to help. So,
So I feel like, yeah, that is a really resembling parallel between the novel and our real world, because a lot of our world is basically just upon empty promises and words, but rarely are people actually able to fulfill whatever they talk about. So yeah, thank you for your contributions, both of you. So I feel like that would also perhaps be an underlying message on purpose by the author to tell us that we shouldn't be trusting empty promises so much from our politicians because they rarely do actually manage to help.
right.
Um,
Oh, could I add one thing?
yeah,
I noticed as I was reviewing quickly that when Dorothy and her friends finally arrive in the Emerald City and ask for help, he says, well, I'll help you, but you got to do something for me first.
Yeah, they do not do things out of the kindness of their heart. Maybe it's just that a lot of politicians in our world are doing it for self benefit as well.
I might even add that it's a capitalist model. I'll do something for a profit. In fact, after they did what he wanted, what did he do? He disappeared.
Yeah, he gets what he wants and he doesn't give them what they want that he promised them. And
Right.
that
So
might
we've given our leader his power and privilege. He's got a
his
wonderful home, all expenses paid, everything. Okay.
and in return he doesn't give us the promises he gives us. Okay, so next I would like to ask if any of you, Green Prophet or Sophia, have any themes that you would like to bring up to talk about first before we continue to some other themes. Any themes?
The colors. What about colors, Sophia?
Uh, there are not two main colors, but like in Kansas, it's gray and like, and so basically in Kansas, it's completely gray, and in the city of Oz, it's also gray, but in the path between those two places, it seems to be like all colorful and rainbow like.
You said it's gray. Sorry. Yes, gray and or green in this Emerald City.
Yeah,
Yeah, which one, gray or green?
it's actually both because they wear these goggles that make them see green and make it have this feeling of, this rich emerald, but really it's just not similar to Kansas, exactly the same as Kansas, gray.
I agree. Yeah. What could those glasses symbolize? In our modern world, those glasses, you call them goggles, changed her perception of the world, of the wizard's world. Does that symbolize something in our world?
Perhaps the goggles would be media because the world as it seems is often not the same as the media portrays it. And maybe the media is like the goggles that bind us and force us to see the world in a certain way when the world might not actually be as the media says it is.
I agree. What do you think, Sophia?
I also agree.
Yeah. Um, the media is creating this culture of fear, uh, asking everyone or leading everyone to believe that this is the healthiest way to deal, the best way to deal with essentially a flu. Um, all the evidence shows otherwise. I would even prefer. Uh, George Carlin has a great comedy skit on this. It's called Germs. Um, anyway, it's all about exercising your immune system, exposing yourself to dirty things like normal animals do, not cleaning everything, covering everything, masking and wearing gloves. The opposite. You get strong by exercising your immune system, exposing yourself to life.
Yeah, another thing, just going back to the theme of colors, is I feel like in our world and in Oz, they're very different in terms of colors because in Oz, each part of Oz is like addicted to only one color. And so they focus on that one color and everything in that part of Oz is just that one color. And I think in our world it might be more different. We have like mixes of colors and things, and maybe our world just might be more diverse than Oz's world.
I think maybe the message was that in our civilized world, the wizard's world, uh, everything is kind of monochromatic. Everything is about money. Money in America is green, or it's famously represented by the dollar bill, which was used to be called the greenback. We like to promote diversity of colors, black, brown, white people, but we're not so good at promoting diversity of opinion, as we're finding out, especially now.
Yeah, that might be something we are also working on, and that might be something we and Oz have in common. I feel like opinions, as in perhaps like different opinions that are against popular opinions, aren't respected much by those who have a different opinion, and people in our world don't really agree to disagree, as some would say it.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot on colors, and also we've made lots of important connections from the novel to our world, which can give us some good reflection on our world and how we should better improve it. Next, I would like to introduce a theme myself, which would be health, because I think something that isn't read, something that is read but not paid much attention to by readers would be the theme of health in this novel. Because while they're too busy focusing on the storyline, they don't realize the really important messages that the book gives us about health. And I think the author actually intended to do this. So, I think the diet and like food choice for Dorothy from when she was living in Kansas and when she was living in Oz changed very greatly, and it also might have changed her health greatly. Sophia and Green Prophet, would you guys like to explain more about this?
Sure. So basically in Kansas, Dorothy lived on a farm that harvested wheat. So we can basically assume her diet consists mainly of carbs. And there's also maybe a few cows, goats, or
Yeah.
chickens. Yeah, so her diet mainly consists of dairy and um, wheat products. And when she goes to Oz, she's basically introduced to a new variety of food like fruits, meat, vegetables, sweets. And essentially, her diet in Oz is a more complete diet than her diet in Kansas.
Yeah, I think you gave like a really great coverage of basically the theme of health in this novel. And just to add on to that, also at her farm there's a grain belt, so she's also eating lots of grain foods. So let's take a look at why this might be unhealthy to her by examining her breakfast when on the second day of Oz when she wakes up into bed, which is butter and bread. Green Prophet, would you like to make some comments on why that might be unhealthy?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to comment that she had choices there. She was still surrounded by trees, and I believe fruit trees and nut-bearing trees. And she chose to eat that, was it butter and bread? Uh,
Yes.
because people get addicted to the foods they do eat. They might look at my diet and say, I couldn't eat that. That's impossible. All day for 4 years. I've been on a raw food diet for 4 years. But our tastes can change, and you learn to like what you have been raised to eat. Um, and I believe part of the reason for that is depending on what you eat, you promote different gut bacteria, and they send signals to you. It's a very complicated relationship. They tell you what to eat. Um, and so, yeah, we're very curious animals. We're the only animals, I think, that have to choose what to eat. We're not going on instinct. All the animals out there know what to eat. They don't make any mistakes. We're constantly making mistakes, getting food poisoning, uh, getting unhealthy because of what we eat. And so we have to figure this out and be strong about uh, the changes we need to make because it does take a bit of discipline.
Yeah, so I think Dorothy was actually like doing really well after by breaking her addiction to those kind of bad foods for her, she was improving her health.
Despite that breakfast there.
Yeah, well, I mean, like later on in the novel, she learns to enjoy some other foods other than these grains and meat. Okay, is there any additional comments anyone would like to make about the theme of health before we move on? No?
No.
Okay. Okay, so firstly, would anyone else have any other themes that you would like to talk about tonight?
Uh, home? Quote, there's no place like home, unquote.
Oh yeah, so I think a huge part of this novel was how Dorothy once was living in poor conditions, which we can elaborate on, and then when she gets to Oz, which is like this paradise, she still her goal is to go home. So Green Prophet, would you like to say anything about that first?
I guess it connects with the diet topic, in which it looks like Dorothy was addicted to her familiar foods, and she seems a little addicted to her familiar place too, her home. Um, so much so that she can't appreciate the fact that her life has actually improved enormously. She has a beautiful environment, maybe a little too much adventure, but good friends, good food, no dangers like tornadoes. Um, so, yeah, I think people do become a little, what's the word, prejudiced in favor of their homes, even when everything tells you
Yeah, this might
to leave. Go, sorry.
yeah, I think this connects to like real life really well because we are like way too attached to our homes, and often we find ourselves too busy scurrying back home to like enjoy the things aside from home.
Right. Although people might be learning to hate their homes now. Um,
Yeah, because we spend too much time in it.
yes, and I also think we should expand the notion of home. Home, I think, also represents the status quo, the world that is we consider normal. And so a lot of people now want to go back to the normal. It is perhaps better than where we are now, but it's not really something I would like to go back to. I'd prefer to go to something better. I think we can do much better than normal.
Yeah, like maybe we're too stuck in every situation we are in now, and we aren't fluent enough to change. So elaborating on what you said about tornadoes, so yeah, Dorothy's home is actually a really dangerous place to be living in because there are many tornadoes around her, and also there are several other factors that could contribute to her home being quite unenjoyable. Sophia, would you like to give your 2 cents on that?
Yes. So from reading the book, other than Toto, her dog, she doesn't really communicate with friends. She lacks friends, and that's something she had in Oz, but chose to end up going back to in Kansas. So basically, Dorothy has no friends. And
We lost you, Sophia.
hello?
Yes, you're back.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so yeah, basically, Dorothy has no friends. Like, I don't know how she survived all those years, but basically, from what I've been hearing, her guardians lacked the ability to protect her from the cyclone, unlike her friends who actually risk themselves to for their friendship, I guess you can say.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point you brought up because in when the cyclone actually happened, what Dorothy's aunt did was just go straight into the what was it called? Does anyone remember that safe room of the house? What it was called?
Storm cellar? I don't know.
Yeah, like that storm kind of cellar. She didn't actually make sure that Dorothy was in that storm cellar first. She just ran and made sure that she was in there. She wasn't caring about Dorothy's well-being before her well-being, which kind of proves that she's a pretty bad guardian. And what did her uncle do? Well, her uncle went to care about the livestock because apparently he cared about those more than Dorothy and his wife.
And what was he going to do with the? Is he going to hold on to those livestock while the tornado comes?
Yeah, and I don't think he was actually able to change anything there either.
Right. So it also reveals that they didn't care about the animals because they don't have a place to hide. Um, by the way, I recently looked up the word Toto. Authors often choose names for important reasons, and discovered that the word Toto refers to a Native American tribe. And I thought, oh, that's interesting and meaningful, isn't it? I think the message there is that that's her only friend, those people. And they are somehow different from civilized people like Uncle Henry, who have no time for anything except work, not really by choice. That's the world he's participating in, makes him that busy. So the native people were much more relaxed people, not nearly as busy as we are. Well, changing for people now, I suppose. And well, one more comment. I think the tornado itself deserves some comparison to the coronavirus. It's changed our world.
Okay, thank you for your connection, Peter. Also, now that we were on the subject of aunts and uncles, I suddenly remembered something that I was thinking when I first read that novel. So, um, we have proof that the author was actually telling us which like types of food in a diet is better for you and which is healthier for you. So far we've been covering what she eats in Kansas and what she eats in Oz, but there was actually a very clear hint from the author as to which diet was much healthier. So she said in the novel something along the rough lines of this. So the aunt, before coming to this house, was a beautiful woman, but then as we saw in that setting of the story, she was thin and gone. So that really shows what will happen to you if you take on only that diet for a long period of time. Sophia, is there any ideas that you would like to bring up?
Um, yeah, I guess before her, I guess after Dorothy left the farm and went to Oz, her life was much happier, and that's not only due to the fact that she has made friends, but also due to the fact that her diet's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's outdoors and active. Can I introduce a theme?
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, the fact that, or the theme of deception, Oz has many faces or many forms. The Wizard of Oz does. What does that mean? Obviously, it means he's deceptive. He can pretend to be a frightening head or a giant head, I think it was, and he can pretend to be an attractive, was it a princess or woman?
I think it was a princess.
Yeah. And that reminds me so much of our politicians. Not only do we sometimes vote liberal or conservative, Republican or Democrat, then it doesn't matter which face or party you vote for, you mostly get the same problems. War, environmental degradation, increasing income gap between the rich and the poor. These things hardly change. And I suppose in themselves, each politician is often very deceptive. Trump, for example, was an actor, so we can expect him to be a skilled liar. He had his own TV show. Our own dear leader was I think a part-time teacher who liked to teach drama theater. I believe it was President Putin of Russia who said Trump is a completely different person in private meetings. So we don't really know who he is.
Yeah, I feel like that was a really deep connection you made from Oz's many faces, which would basically be the many different faces of politics. But in the end, you get the same lies and unfulfilled promises.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good connection to our world. We should think about how we should change that. Sophia, would you like to introduce any ideas or connections?
Um, yeah, I definitely agreed with what you guys said. Also, I feel like, actually, never mind.
Uh, okay, so I actually want to bring up another theme that is um quite shown in the novel, in my opinion, which is the theme of irony. So, like we've already covered, when Dorothy is in a paradise, her main goal is to reach home, which might be one of them, the themes of irony. But I have another idea to bring up that I think the author intended to say, that we could also make some connections to the real world one, which would be that the cowardly lion wants bravery, the scarecrow wants brains, and the tin man wants a heart. And yet they clearly already have these things, and they also might be the one in the group who has them the most. So I think we can make some good connections to the real world here. So Green Prophet and Sophia, would you guys like to make any connections?
Ladies first.
Um, yeah, it is ironic. I think biggest ironic, the biggest irony in the whole plot of The Wizard of Oz is Dorothy going back to Kansas. I think it does give us this message and the stereotype that blood is thicker than water, that your family will always be those with blood connections to you. And I don't really agree with that. People, I feel like friends who are willing to be there for you and protect you, they can also be considered family.
Yes, yeah, lots of people experience that. And we should treat everyone as family and not discriminate, if I can use that very loaded word. Um, yeah, to go back to Kevin's suggestion that there's irony in the fact that the four friends, or at least the three friends, already have what they want, and what they are going to the wizard to ask for. Of course, it is ironic, and the connection to our world is this, or the message is this: we don't need our leaders. It's a big lie to assume that leaders or governments, let's say, are necessary to maintain peace between human beings. That's one of the biggest lies perpetrated on humans. we can take care of each other. We are mostly a peaceful and loving species. Unless we are under extreme stress, food scarcity, which is largely our own fault as we mismanage our environment and we create food pressures, or then yes, it's what's the word? Stress can develop and conflict. But normally that's not the case. Now we go to our governments for welfare, like beggars. Now everyone's being turned into a beggar. Well, not everyone, a lot of small business owners and employees who are home and unemployed. And they're all becoming dependent on the government, and they might be thinking, thank goodness for the government. But in reality, the government created this.
Yeah, I think a huge connection between it would be that we are relying on the government to do many things for us, but really we can find it amongst ourselves. And from here, I would like to just go to the theme of teamwork, right? So we don't need the government, a certain amount of ordinary people, to be doing everything for us. Because if we all join together and work on things together, then we can actually get things done just as well, if not better. And I think in the Wizard of Oz, it also shows this because along with healthy interaction as friends, that might have also helped them find it. And to overcome many obstacles, they had to rely on each other, and everybody was contributing. We weren't relying on one person. So I feel like teamwork is a huge thing, and we shouldn't be just relying on like some people like Oz who give us empty promises and aren't actually more powerful than we are together.
Indeed.
Okay, so I have another theme in mind, but first I'd like to ask any of you have any themes.
I've run out.
Oh, Sophia.
No.
Okay, so a theme I would like to bring up and talk about, which is some reflection you can do after reading this novel and analyzing carefully Dorothy, is that Dorothy is not your stereotypical protagonist in this case. Does anyone have any ideas as to why she wouldn't be considered your usual protagonist?
Uh, Dorothy, well, I guess she's one of the more naive protagonists that I've encountered.
Yeah, I think
And
that.
yeah, and she definitely doesn't resort to violence and has a way of, I guess, standing up for her friends.
Yeah, so I feel like the way that Dorothy carries out her tasks is different from your average protagonist, like you said. She doesn't actually purposely resort to violence for things. And because your average protagonist would go, huzzah, and they would stab their sword into this evil person in the story, and then they would get rid of the villain, and everyone would cheer it up for them. But in this case, Dorothy doesn't want to hurt anybody. And both of the times when she kills both of the wicked witches of the West, both of them were accidental, and she didn't actually mean to do it. Green Prophet, is there anything you would like to add on to this?
Yeah, I agreed with maybe half of what Sophia said. Uh, Dorothy is naive, but I also find that she wasn't very helpful. She was dependent on her friends. She even fed her little Toto bread, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, she did.
That is not proper to a canine's diet. And maybe there was a message there about how we feed our dogs. Dogs will eat almost anything you give them if they live with you. They think they are like you.
But it's your responsibility to make sure they're getting the proper things that are healthier for them.
Correct. And presently, dogs are being fed, trash, dried, processed scraps. Most of it is not even meat. Anyway, beyond that, I felt that. No, let me catch my thought again. Although all the three friends do have the qualities that they think they need. Um, in some respect, um, they don't have the qualities that the others are looking for. For example, the Tin Woodman is looking for a heart, love. And it's clear he has some of that. But I don't think he has brains.
I think when they go to most of the obstacles and the Tin Woodman would be able to cut down trees to get through this obstacle, it's always the Scarecrow who tells him what to do. The Scarecrow would always be the one who would basically be the brain for the Tin Woodman.
Right. Or so was it the Tin Woodman who said, sorry, was it the Scarecrow who said to the Tin Woodman, chop down trees and build a truck so that we can pull the lion out of the field of poppies?
Yeah, I think that was the Scarecrow actually.
Okay, well, whoever was responsible for that decision, there was a clear pattern of the Tin Woodman constantly chopping down trees to solve problems.
Oh, that could be a connection to our real world. I think because in our world we might also be doing this thing. So the Tin Woodman might be representing humans, how we overcome our problems, which is a lot by relying on and destroying the environment to solve
Right.
our problems.
Yeah. In fact, the Tin Woodman is kind of like a machine, right? He's metal. Um,
He's like the machine that we use.
yeah, saws and chainsaws, and now we have giant tree harvesting machines that just grind them up in a matter of seconds.
Okay. Is there any other ideas? Sophia, do you have any ideas or themes you would like to bring up?
Um, I was just thinking after Dorothy left, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion, they all, in a way, got some sort of power. Like they became the ruler of some realm in Oz.
Right,
But Dorothy didn't get any power. She just got what she was in before.
right. What was the author's message? Like the lion and the Tin Woodman, I think all of them really wanted to taste that power.
I feel like the lion especially the main reason that the lion really wanted courage was because all the animals wanted him to rule them, but in order to rule them he needed courage. So I think the lion's motive was definitely originally just to have power. The Scarecrow, I feel, did not originally think that, but he was, of course, happy after Oz made him. But he didn't know before that he was going to do that.
You're right. So my interpretation is that they were corrupted by the Emerald City into seeking power, no longer being friends and equals of others, but ruling over people.
Yeah. Um. Okay, Green Prophet. Is there any more ideas you would like to introduce?
Nothing comes to mind. It's a wonderful book, um, deceptively simple.
Yeah, but actually, when you put an in-depth analysis to it, you can dig and find lots of connections to our real world as well as many underlying messages of the author. So we've covered many things today on our podcast. I'd like to thank both of you for joining. And yeah, I think we've covered everything. So thank you for coming.